You're listening to Kate Palmer from sparkletart.com, and today I'm going to show you how to create this gorgeous scribbly bird card using magicals from Lindy's Stamp Gang. To create this card, I've started with a background that I've made earlier. This one has no shimmer, and it's been created using flat Fabios from Lindy's Stamp Gang. I've used Ocean Breeze Blue, Summer Lovin Sun, and Hibiscus Rose and T-Bird Turquoise. Now, this creates a beautiful base to work on, and you can practically add anything else you like. Now, I've also added in a little time travel teal starburst, but I've been very sparing so that the glimmer doesn't take over. Now, I've made a large sheet so I can use this background for a couple of different projects. For this particular one, I've decided to cut it into a small square and use this piece for my card background. Now, you could easily create pages or use it in other projects or even as a collage piece if you like. It stamps beautifully and you can paint and draw on this. So it's absolutely fantastic. No need to seal this one. You can just go ahead and start using it straight away. Now, one of my recent acquisitions was this very cute Dina Wakley stamped set. It's one of the new media range from Ranger. Now, while this technically might be meant for journaling, there's no reason you can't use it on a card if you feel like it. It just means the image on my card is going to be a little bit bigger than it might otherwise be. Now, what I'm going to do to work over the top here is use my sparkly products from Lindy's Stamp Gang. I'm sure that comes as no surprise to you all. And just because the sparkle will have a nice contrast with this beautiful flat background. So I've got a couple of colours here. Please excuse the label on this one. It was a demo. So I've got my magicals. I have Bells of Island Green, Delphinium Turquoise, and Steampunk Sepia. And I'm just going to do a few different things, all with these magicals, just so you can see there's some different ways to use them. Now, I also have one of my Dilutions by Dyan Reaveley stamps. This is one of the older ones, but it's one of my favourites. I adore these leaves and the circles. And the other supply I've got is some of the Lindy's Stamp Gang embossing powders. And I've got the Spanish Moss Green. If you put them over a colour or a pattern, are slightly translucent, so you'll see a little bit of that peeking through. I really love that about these. If you put them on white or black, you won't get the same effect, but on colour or patterns, you will. First way to use your magicals is as a dry powder. I'm going to start with my Versamark pad here, and I'm going to stamp some leaves over the background. So using my nice Versamark ink pad, I'm just going to ink up my stamp here. Now, what I'm going to do is going to create quite a pale effect, but that's sort of what I want. Now I'm just continuing to add more of these little leafy images here, making sure to leave this centerpiece empty, and I'm just adding a few extra little leaves to act as a border for my image. Now, I've got the Bells of Island Green here, and what I'm going to do is use them as a mica powder for this, just this particular bit. And to do that, you just lightly brush over the surface. Now, don't be stingy here. Make sure you've added enough of the magicals to cling really, really well to each of those stamped images, because this will provide some of the pattern and some of the background. Now, you can see that it's picked up the leaves here, and because I've used a slightly different green than I have on the background, you can see them quite clearly. So when it's not facing the light, you see a pale green colour. When it is in the light, you get that gorgeous shimmer. Now, the problem at the moment is I've added this mica over the background, and it's all looking a bit shimmery. So what I do now is take a fluffy brush and just brush a little bit of that mica off. Now, you're not aiming to completely brush all the extra off the background. just enough so that those leaves stand out a little bit better. Because if everything's sparkly, the sparkles don't make quite as much of an impact. So just giving that a little bit of a brush. And what you can see now is that when you look at it, the leaves are the only sparkly thing on this background page, and they stand out a little bit better. So that is using the Magicals as a powder, and basically that just acts like a mica powder. The next way that you can use your Magicals is as a liquid ink. I've got the Steampunk Sepia in the Magicals, and I'm going to add some of this. It's just to a small paint palette here. Now that's more than I would usually use on projects, but I might need a bit of extra here. Into that I'm going to add some clean water. I say clean water here because I've often picked up the wrong jar and used my painting water. But what I'm going to do is drip this onto my card to create a tree branch. Now I'm terrible at drawing branches. They always seem to turn out far too uniform and don't look natural at all. So I've discovered this is a great way to kind of fake it. So I'm just going to suck a little bit of this up into my eyedropper. And I know my little bird's going to be sitting here, so I'm going to have the branch quite low. And all I need to do to create it is tilt my card to an angle and just let the stuff dribble. Now, if you're a scrapbooker or an art journaler, this is the same process and technique you would use to get those gorgeous drippy lines that everybody uses these days. It's really simple, and you just mix a bit more of the Magicals in with a bit more water than you would use if you were using it as a paint. Now, you don't just have to use it for drips. You can see that I'm kind of getting the drips to go in the direction I want, but you could also pick this up with a dip pen and use it to write with. Imagine gorgeous sparkly lettering on your pages. Just yum. So many things you can do with these paints. I just adore them. You can always scoop this up again off the scrap paper and reuse it. There's no reason to waste that. Alright, so now what I've got is a little tree branch for my bird to sit on up here. So that's a really cute start to this. So you can see I now have this beautiful green leafy shimmer, and I also have this beautiful shimmer from the Steampunk Sepia that creates the branch. And now I'm going to add my little bird. The next way that you can use your Magicals is as a paint. Make it as thick or as thin as you like. I've got the Onyx Black VersaFine ink, which is a lovely waterproof ink. I'm just going to put him to his little feet on the middle. Press down nice and firmly so he makes good contact, and take the stamp away. Now, what I've got left is my Delphinium Turquoise, and I'm going to use this in a different way again. Now, for ultra strong Magicals, the way I like to do this is to grab a little paintbrush and work from the lid. I've got a little bottle of clean water here. I'm just dipping into it and adding a little bit of water to my lid and mixing the Magicals until they form a gorgeous sparkly liquid. And then I'm just going to use this to paint my little bird. Now the areas that would be darkest are the ones that I start with. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to lose a little bit of the detail from the stamp, but I can always go back over this later. Now if you'd like a beautiful graded look, so going from darker to lighter, then just keep using the colour that's on the brush until it runs out. Or you can even dip it in a little bit of water and make it go just that little bit further, and that way you'll get darker and lighter areas. And just keeps going and going and going. But it gives you a really beautiful result. Now I'm not looking to completely change the background colour here. I'm just looking to make my little bird pop a little bit more off the page. So I'm just going to keep repeating that Dipping back into the darker colour and using that to add wherever I want darker areas. My brush runs dry. And again, if you want to lighten that colour, add more water. It's that simple. That's why I like the Magicals so much. They're so versatile. You really can do lots of things with them. A little bit more water, a little bit more colour, and you can see how little I'm using here. It goes so far. I don't think I've actually finished a bottle of the Magicals yet. In fact, I know I haven't. Now, I've got a little bit of Creme Brulee cream. I'm going to do the same thing. A bit too much water on my brush there. Now, the creme brulee is a bit unusual because the cream is made up of a few different colours, so you need to make sure that you have mixed this one really well, or else you get little streaks of red and blue. It's a bit strange, but it's the colours that go into making up cream. I only need a tiny bit of this. Just going to give him a little bit of white on his chest and on the face. Now, the more magical powder you put in, the more opaque the finished colour. So this is turning out a little bit dark for me. So what I'm going to do is dip my brush in some water. I might just drag it around a bit first. So I've got a bit of a mixing of those two colours. Put my brush in some water, washed off, and then I can then use that clean water to drag a little bit of this colour around and get some of that blue that's underneath to sort of pop through a bit. I'm just sort of dragging that coloured mica around a little bit. Mind you, now that I look, it's kind of growing on me. Alright, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just leave it like this, because I don't know about you, I think he's looking really cute, and that creme brulee cream underneath has just made the other colour look even better. Now for this one I'm going to use Marigold Yellow. I only need the tiniest little bit here. And just so that's not the only place that colour appears, I'm going to add a tiny little bit of it into his wings and the tail. Not a lot. Just a little bit to give it a bit more sort of texture look to it. That's the end of the Magicals. So what I've done is I've mounted it on very stark black so that the colours really pop. I've gone over the little bird with a black paint pen just to sort of reinforce the edges. I've added a little bit of a rub-on down the bottom, and I've added one of the little bird's nests from Creme, and a couple of leaves, of course, coloured in my Lindy Stamp Gang embossing powders. And I think he's finished. You've been listening to Kate Palmer for Lindy's Stamp Gang.